Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, the show where faith meets focus and potential becomes purpose. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, mental performance coach, speaker, and believer that greatness begins within. Each episode, we'll uncover the biblical principles, mindset strategies, and daily disciplines that help student athletes, parents, and leaders just like you walk boldly in their calling. Let's step onto the path that leads to true greatness, God's way. Hey, welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester. In today's episode, it's a great one. It's one of nostalgia for me. So my dear friend, Tim Douglas, joins the show. And this is what friendship is all about. Do you have one of those friends that you end up for just life and work and all these different things that you used to talk to all the time, and all of a sudden you just don't talk to hardly at all? And when you reconnect, it's like zero time went by. Well, that's what you're going to get today with Tim. And so we used to talk multiple times a day, every day for probably 2.5 years. And then I didn't realize it was this long ago. In 2022, he took a new role, a leadership role in a corporate environment, moving away from being a contractor where he set his own hours, he did what he needed to do. To now he was in a leadership position, and it's a great position for him. And we talk a lot about that. Well, when he took that, knowingly he was going to be a lot busier, a lot more challenges of getting started in a new role, and he gives 100% in everything that he does. I guess we lost touch. It was just life got away. Like I said, I didn't realize it was 4 years ago that he took that position. That's how fast things go by. But when you listen to this episode, I hope you see that it feels like I had just talked to him yesterday, and we've exchanged texts, but I don't think I've really even spoken to him very much on the phone even in 2 years, because I know we had dinner about 2 years ago. So in the episode, he talks about leadership. We talk about a lot of different things that just doesn't apply to life in the corporate world. It just pertains to life. It pertains to, he defines team, and I'm glad that he defined team this way. It's not just in your work environment. It's at home, it's at church, it's in your community. It's even yourself. If you don't have anybody else around you, how do you lead yourself? And it's a great episode that initially I had a few questions in a direction that I wanted it to go, but I just know how Tim and I talk, and I knew it was just going to go wherever it wanted to go. And I wanted it to be an organic conversation. So you get a glimpse into what do phone conversations sound like when Tim and I hop on the phone. This is it. What's really cool that came out of it is that we're going to make this a regular conversation about leadership, about different elements that he's been learning through this transition in his life now, moving into a leadership position 6 to 8 years later after his other leadership position, and then as he's been a contractor. So in life, in Pathways to Greatness, we're always doing different things, and we both feel that this is relevant. It's also one that I enjoy. I enjoy talking about these things with Tim specifically. So ladies and gentlemen, Tim Douglas.
Be good.
And it's going to be informal. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a dear friend, Tim Douglas, on the show. As you can see, I have my Inspired Way hat on.
Nice.
And Tim is one of the ones that actually encouraged me for a long time to start a podcast, and I did it. And so this is a chance for us to connect. We had dinner together. Oh goodness, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I was gonna say about 1.5 years or so. Yeah, something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's insane, and it's interesting because I was thinking, Tim, is that we had several years where we were like in touch every day, multiple times a day, and then you went and had to go get a real job. and that always changes things, and so that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about is is around the changes, as you know, with Pathways to Greatness podcast, is that everybody has ups and downs, twists and turns. Everybody has a different definition of pathways and what greatness looks like. And ultimately, nobody has a linear line. And like you said right before we hit recording, is so many of us have these theories and thoughts of how we should do things. We just never apply them or never
Right.
are
Yeah.
put in a situation to apply them. And now you're in that position.
Mm.
And when I saw one of your LinkedIn posts, which I never go on LinkedIn
It's
anymore,
pretty funny. Yeah.
hardly at all. And
And
then
that was
all of a
my
sudden I
first
saw it.
time back in probably many years. So actually,
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get me started on the LinkedIn platform. It's a mess. It's not what it used to be, but what social media is.
mm,
But it's a blessing because it reconnects people and it shows,
yeah,
it allows people to kind of tap in.
yeah, absolutely. So well, here we
So
are.
how you been? This is for the audience. This is super informal. We haven't had a conversation. We haven't really had a long
Mhm.
talk in a while. So I wanted to use this as a way for you guys to get a glimpse of a conversation. So how
Yeah,
have you been?
good, really good. And it's funny as I was thinking about today. I know, I was planning a trip down in January, and it got postponed, and I thought, crap. Knowing this, I should have just planned a trip down there, and we sat live, sitting on the couch having this conversation. But either way, this is still a good avenue. I love having these, this day and age where we can actually sit and see each other still and communicate and whatnot. And of course, it's been around for a while now, but things are good. Things are really good. Yeah, as you mentioned, like before we hit record, we were just talking about the transition and what that looks like, why that happened, and whatnot. And so I think for me, when just thinking about your podcast as I'm sitting here, like, what am I going to say? And like thinking about your podcast with your question, a pathway to greatness is for me. It was, I'd been a contractor, independent contractor for, gosh, 8 years, something like that, before I made the transition back to the corporate side of things. And for me, it was, I was enjoying everything that I was doing. So it wasn't that I was not enjoying things. I was really enjoying being the contractor, independent, had the podcast, The Inspired Way, had the platform, we were doing events, we were doing different things together, and it was a lot of fun. I was learning a lot. I've always have been into leadership, always have been geared that way. For whatever reason, I don't know. Never was really ever looking for those roles, but just always kind of found myself in some sort of leadership role, whether it was on sports teams, just in school. People would come to me asking for advice, or even in the workplace, same thing. It was always just kind of had that, I don't know, draw, I guess, for people to kind of come and connect with. And so for me, it was always something I'm like, hey, I want to, if they're coming to me for something, I want to make sure that I'm well prepared to serve them and help them. And so, many years ago, I started thinking about that. I'm like, dude, you're a coach. Like, that's what you are. Like, you like to coach people, and see them operate at their highest true potential. And so, so I was enjoying that side of things. But then, of course, through time, through specifically during that time of, I would say, 2016, 17, 18, even 19, really kind of diving deep into working on myself, bettering myself. That way I can show up differently in, this world, but also for people that I was coaching, people that I was serving and helping. And then, um, uh, I got reached out by this company that they were one of my contracts. And so I'd been serving them for about 7 years, and ended up, wanting me to come on full time. And I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm great.
Oh, I remember those conversations.
So I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. So, but then they kept asking. And I told my wife, I thought, should at least hear what they have to say. Like, they must have something in mind. And so initially what they threw out there, I was like, nah, I'm good. They basically wanted me to come do the same thing for them. And what they saw, though, is they saw the ability to, these are things, because I asked them, like, why me? Like, why are you reaching out to me for this particular role? And the role was they had a challenging team, a discipline within the company that was really struggling at the time. And they said, hey, we see some things in you that we feel like you would be a great team lead for our company. And so I just specifically asked them, hey, what is it that you see? Because I'm in a contract role, not in some leadership role for your company. So how do you know that I'm a fit for your company and your team to lead this team? And so some of the things that they rattled off, I was like, Roger that. All right. They're seeing the things that I feel like I like you know, to do and provide. And so anyway, that started that conversation. And then it came down to that conversation, by the way, lasted for, as you know, close to a year, just back and forth with them, really trying to learn more about them, learn more about the, the company and myself in that role, what that looks like, yada, yada, yada. So I think that's important. Like anytime you're making a transition, make it slow, get as much information as you possibly can to make the best decision that you can. No, I get it. There's times when, in leadership where when you're in a lead role, you've got to be very decisive. You got to make decisions, you got to take action quickly, so you take as much information as you can in the shortest amount of time. But if you have the time, take the time. Right. And so I want to make that distinction, but so I had the time. I was in no hurry. But then at the end of the day, the decision came down to a few things. But one of this, for the sake of the call here, it was all of the other things that I was learning within leadership and team building. And then fast forward to 21, you and I got an experience to go do the basic course with 3 of 7 project. And learning things from the basic course about leadership, and then just operating as a team, I had started to incorporate those things into what I was already doing. And then also, my relationship, friendship, I should say, excuse me, with Will Branham and some others, and just tapping into what he had about leadership and team building and things like that. And so I thought, wow, okay, these are all things that I've started to implement and apply to myself. And I'm sharing these with other people, but I've never seen success in it for myself. And so it was like, wait a minute, you're sharing some things that that like you feel are true, but yet I've not put those things into practice. And so really it was like, okay, here's a struggling team. Here's a dysfunctional team, essentially. As a matter of fact, the quote was, it is the weakest and least productive team in the entire company. And so I love challenges. So that just said challenge to me, like, hey, here's a great opportunity. Plus coaching, like at the time there was 19 team members. So, close to 20 people that I could go and directly have some coaching, ability with them and to help this team grow. And so it was an opportunity to step into that. So yeah, it was a huge step, big transition going back to the workforce, but it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it
I don't know
seems
how
like
deep
it.
you
I
want to
mean,
go into all that, but yeah.
no, and we're gonna peel a bunch of layers back, and I hope the audience heard several things in that. Is the first thing that jumped out to me that I jotted down was serve. Is that you're definitely a servant leader in the sense to where what I've always known about you is you're a take charge kind of guy, meaning that if you see an opportunity or a gap, you fill it. You just do it. You don't have to be asked. You're constantly scanning the environment that you're in of what are the opportunities that are there. Because I remember when we went on the basic course, you're like, I want to be led. I want to go there to be led. And then you were immediately thrust into a leadership role, even though
Yeah.
you weren't the quote unquote team leader, you were the
Right.
navigator, which is a
Yeah.
leadership role. You have to direct people to go. And being a servant leader puts you in a position to be a leader. The other thing that I wrote down that I want people to understand is, for 7 years that you'd worked with this company, you were leading without a title.
Yeah.
You were reflecting leadership characteristics that they saw,
Yeah.
and they said, okay, here's an opportunity, that this is the guy. So in essence, you were interviewing for 7 years. So for the
Yeah. That's
audience,
a good point. Yeah.
how you show up every day is
Mm.
what people see of you. That's the brand that you're creating, whether you realize it or not, whether you have a title or not. You have the capability, like Tim had said, and that's the servant leadership mentality. Is you don't need a title to
No.
serve others and to
Yeah.
lead others, and that's what I want people to really understand. And the other part is that you saw an opportunity, not from a knowing you and being a part of those conversations of going back and forth. Is you taking this position was far from ego to get a title of manager,
Yeah.
director,
Yeah.
whatever leadership title you were going to get. It was like you said, here's an opportunity to help 19 people
Hmm.
improve.
Yeah.
They see that the company is seeing that they've had a lack of leadership that has allowed them to scatter and not have direction. And in life, we all need direction. Whether you think you don't, you
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because without that, and that's where you and I, our faith is our direction, is that helps
Hmm.
us in when we're in situations that there are no parameters, there is no leadership, is that we use our faith to keep us in that
Mm.
straight and narrow, to help us have some sort of a direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you hit on some very key principles that we go by on this team, and that is everyone's a leader. I don't care. There is no rank. Leadership is not a rank, title, or a role. Uh, it's not positional. It's behavioral. And so, it's how you show up. It's how you engage with people. It's how you ask questions. Leadership is asking good questions. Leadership is saying, "Hey, I don't fully understand this. Can you please help me understand this a little better?" Right? That's versus, no, I'm just going to pretend that I know what I'm doing and go through the motions and then end up hoping that I'm doing it right. That's ego. So, it's leadership is actually stepping up, voicing something. Whether it's, hey, this is not working. I'll give you a perfect example. I was going to share this actually. I'm sharing this with some other groups, but we had a junior team lead, and then this is a perfect example of this. And this is what I teach all the time with the team: is leadership at every level. Everyone's a leader. So your organizational chart should think of it as, you got your top guy, and then it breaks down from there. It's got all the different, like the pyramid, basically, right? The chain of command. But if you were to replace names in that and just put leader, that's that's what a team should look like. A team full of leaders, to where they all feel safe to actually step up and take charge, take action when they see something. Because problems don't solve themselves. Every problem is a leadership problem. In other words, someone's got to step up and lead. And so here's a great example of that. We had a junior level. When I say junior level, he's like the bottom of positions. And so we have eight titles basically within our organization. The team that I lead, we have basically 8 different ranks. And so he's like rank 1. He's at the bottom, and he's on a project, and he sees something that isn't right. And so instead of just kind of going along like and overlooking it and doing what he was brought onto the project to do, because he was brought onto the project to do something very specific. However, he saw something that wasn't right, leaned into it a little bit. Found out, I think this is the solution. Took that to the senior team lead to say, "Hey, I found this problem. I think this is the solution. What are your thoughts?" "Yep, that solves the problem." "Okay, well, working together to solve that, to fix that." Then here's the cool part. The junior says, "Hey, why don't I go through the rest of the entire project just, you know, kind of scour the land, so to speak. Let me see if there's any other issues. And if there are, I'll just go ahead and take care of that if you're okay with that. So the takeaway there is, here's a junior who's taking ownership of a problem and leading. The senior isn't letting ego and control get involved and saying, no, this is my project. I'm going to, you know, because he's just brought in as a support. And so it's cool to see those things like that, because that's a team serving each other, right? Helping each other. And I state this all the time. It's team first, mission first. You know, so if you start to put yourself first, then you're in the wrong. And, you know, whether that's a team lead, whether that's a junior, who, it doesn't really matter. If you're putting yourself above the team or above the mission, the project, then you're in the wrong, right? So I think, you know, the more we can keep that in perspective when we're working, and listen, let's define team real quick, because I know we're talking a lot about, you know, corporate environment. And I don't know your audience. I'm sure many of them have workplaces and they work with different people and they're parts of teams and things, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're at home and your home is your team. You know, you've got a spouse, you know, even if it's a team of one, yourself, if you're single and you're listening to it, you've got to learn to lead yourself well. Right. And ego plays a part when just in with yourself. So, you know, so there's things I wanted to identify. Team, you know, environment could be anything. You know, it's not just the workplace.
I'm really glad that you brought that part up, because that was the whole thing when I was listening to you, is how this, we shouldn't just put this in the corporate world. This goes
Right.
at home as well. And I know
100%.
so often I was a quote unquote great corporate leader, but not a great home leader,
Yeah.
which is so upside down and backwards. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
we read these books about professional development, and you and I have
Mhm.
talked all about, you know, John Maxwell and Marshall Goodsman. It never fails.
Yeah.
They do yard work in front of my house, and I do these recordings at different times, and then the
Yeah.
dog goes nuts.
Jax is
But
going
anyways,
nuts.
so it's, you know, we just have to make sure that we do that. And when something isn't working, you have to look at it and change. And at home, do we do that often?
Mm-hmm,
I'm
mm-hmm.
getting better. I think it's always a work in progress. We just have to understand, like you said, is define the team as anything. Could be a team
Right.
of one. It could be yourself, your
Yeah.
community, your house, those type things. It's just really important. The other thing that I want to highlight that you shared was that you created such a positive environment for that young employee. They'll never forget that as long
Right.
as they live. No matter what else that they do in life, they'll remember that opportunity that you provided them to step into safely
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
provide feedback, knowing that, well, if I start getting pushback somewhere else, Tim's got my back. Tim's going
Yeah.
to be the one that's going to say, hey, look, he saw something. Let's see what else he sees. And your leadership, it's also a testament to the senior and of them as well, because they
Yeah.
have an
Sure.
open mind and receiving. You just created the environment that it's like, look, don't feel threatened. He's trying to help. And maybe that senior person was like, I've needed the help. I've just been scared to ask for it. Because how
Yeah.
often are we scared, even though we need it, we're scared
Yeah.
to ask for it. And that may
Right.
have been the
Yeah.
biggest relief for that person, to have somebody look over everything and make sure it all looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's funny as you say that. I was just thinking about, you know, we incorporated these basically squads within the team, and the squads are there just specifically for that main purpose. They serve many other purposes. But that was something that I was, you know, and might be a hard transition, so I apologize. But it was just kind of what you were just talking about, this protection and this safety and covering. And that's really what it was about. You know, the team should be there to cover each other, protect each other, to have each other's back, essentially. And what we were finding, there was some issues, you know, with what we call back checks. In other words, you know, if you do your work, you're supposed to look at your work, back check your own work, make sure it's good before you send it off to the engineers. And so for the listeners, I'm in a engineering space, environmental engineering, and so we're doing water wastewater treatment facilities or conveyance systems, and so it's important that our information is right. And so so anyway, we're finding some discrepancies or some issues where it's like, hey, this is the process. However, the process doesn't seem to be working because there's issues with the back checks. And so I, you know, again, man, there's so much I want to say here. There's so much to like really kind of peel back the onion, so to speak, when it comes to leadership and teams. And that is, so I'm just going to drop a few things. You choose where you want to take all this. But, one of the things that I wanted to do is we were developing this team, which was at the time 19 when I took over, which today it's about 40. So right at 40. And so as we were growing, you can imagine there's all kinds of other little issues with size. And I should mention that this is a team that's many of them do not work side by side in an office together. We're all scattered throughout 20 some offices, all 40 of us. And so some of them are in an office together, some are not, many are not. And so we were seeing this growth happening. And how do you maintain connectivity, collaboration, communication, all these different things that help a team stay functioning very well and smooth together? And so we had this issue, and I'm trying not to get ahead of myself. So we had this issue, and one of the things that I also try to instill in the team is decentralized command. So when I first took over the team, it was command and control type environment where I took everything in close. So, and I kind of led everything, every aspect of it, because I wanted to truly understand what was happening, who was who. I didn't know who was who on the team. I knew maybe 4 people when I took the team over. And so, and I don't even like saying that. That sounds weird to me, but took the team of that. But you know what I mean. So, so anyway, so command and control, totally understand what's happening. So then, at some point, I could now build trust with the team and trust with them. They trust me, I trust them, and now we shift to this commander's intent. So now they understand the direction I'm taking the team. Now they understand my intent, my heart, where we're going, what we're doing, what we're about. And when they understand the intent, now I can give you responsibility, trust to go make decisions. I don't have to be the decision maker. And so what was happening was with the old guy, because he was just everything bottlenecked through him. And he had to make all the calls, all the decisions. No one would no one would even say boo unless he said to say boo, right? So it was a very authoritative type leadership style, which was very fragmented. No one really felt like a team of that 19. You might have known, and this is just from what I've heard from the existing team members that were there, you might have known 2 or 3 people at the most of 19. And so, so anyway, this whole decentralized command type thing is being able to allow others to make decisions. And so here, back to this back checking thing is, I have a team lead. So we have different teams within the overall team to kind of help drive things forward, because I can't do it all. So we said, okay, hey, you take over this, you take over this, you take over this. And all of it is to globally help the overall team move forward into the future. And so one of them is quality. So the quality team lead, approach this with them. I'm like, okay, I can't make the call here. This is they're the quality team. This is a quality issue. Let's see what their thoughts are. So the quality team lead didn't really know what to do about that. And so, okay, the problem still has to be resolved. And so I said, okay, you think about it. I'll think about it. We'll come back together and see what we got. So my idea, my thought is to take this this large team. We're growing. How do we continue to maintain connectivity and collaborate, this collaborative environment, being all fragmented all over the country, and to make sure that back checks are getting done and to help the team grow. And so I started thinking like in the church world, it's like you got big church and you got little church. Little church are these little small groups, and you get really close and tight within the small groups, and that's how churches can grow really big. Well, I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute, I've done this before. I've seen this before. So I basically went back to the quality team lead and I said, hey, I've got an idea here. Here's my thought. We create squads. We create these squadrons. And at the time we had 6 squadrons. And so those squadrons, we would, the quality team, because she had assembled a team of people who focused on quality of what we do. And each of those would become a squad lead. And then the entire team would all be placed underneath them randomly. We just randomly select people to put them underneath there. The cool part about that, holy smokes, like morale just changed. Like it wasn't about policing. It was about having each other's back. Hey, this is to protect you. I don't want you to put something in front of the engineers that we could have caught, right? Like the team should protect the team, because if the team fails, everybody fails. Because if I put something in front of an engineer and I'm wrong or I miss something, they don't just see it as me. They see it as the entire team. The civil team looks like, because so it was as a protection of the team and to protect the projects, but then to also see, to help these, there was a couple of facets of it. One was to, and I'll shut up here in a minute, but because I can talk forever on this stuff, but was to help each other get really connected to one another and get to know each other on a very close basis, because they meet weekly. Go over, hey, who has back checks? Do you have any needs this week? You have any questions? Can we support you? Da 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 da. These squad leads do this, and so what we were finding is mentorship was happening. All these different things were starting to become a byproduct of this. And the other thing was, as many of them initially were had some sort of lead role already. And so the idea is every 12 months, we rotate these squad leads out and we rotate new squad leads in to give people who don't normally have a leadership title or an opportunity to lead on projects or anything like that. They get the lead, 3, 4, 5 people within their squad. And it's a safe environment for them to develop their leadership style, their leadership skills. And it's been really cool. So where we went with all that was just to kind of help protect the team, to have the team's backing. And it's not a policing thing. When you have teammates who are calling you out on things, that's a good team. That's a well-balanced team, I think. So.
Yeah. And it all comes down to the word. Yeah, no, it's great, is empowerment. It's just all about empowering people to make decisions. And when you were describing the bottleneck of leadership, so like you had said earlier, that's ego. If that person needed everything to go through him, that's ego. The other thing that I thought of, and I know you and I are big with the military, is Black Hawk Down. One of the biggest challenges that happened at Black Hawk Down is they were not allowed to make a turn until the plane above them told them where to turn. Well, the delay from what the plane was seeing that would get to them, they had already driven past where they needed to turn.
Yeah.
So, and then which created absolute chaos and mayhem. So the people on the ground were frustrated because the people they were depending upon to get them to where they needed to go were slow in making the decision. So how often as leaders have we done the same thing because of our poor self-esteem and our control issues that we haven't dealt with? We feel like we need to cast that upon other people. Well, the more layers of leadership that you have, and the more dependent upon is the leadership as it goes up. Just think of the delay as, okay, I need to make a decision today, but I've got to ask Tim. Tim has to ask his boss. His boss has to have his boss. Well, by then the moment's passed. Like
Yeah.
the ability to be able to act on something is gone. Where if you allow them to say, hey, look, I don't think that you're going to get every decision you make right. There's going to be some sneaky eggs in the
Right.
the carton, but it's
Yeah.
part of it. But through that, we're going to be able to work through those things. So if you do make a mistake, don't be fearful of your job. That as long as it's not
That's
a
right.
big major one, and if it's a huge decision,
Yeah.
you will have taught them and mentored them enough to know it's like, okay, this is a big one. I need to get either my
100%.
squad together
That's
and
right.
ask them and say, look, I've got to act on this quick. Tim's out of the office. What do
Yeah.
you guys think? Because that you've created that safe environment. Back to what you had said before when you defined teams, have we created that same thing
Mm.
within our friend circles, within
Yeah.
our family, with all of those different things? And I would say most of us, if you really challenge yourself and you
Yeah.
look at yourself in the mirror, there are gaps.
Mm.
There's
Yeah.
gaps that you haven't created that. And then the challenge is how do you work through that? It all
Mm-hmm.
starts with intention, and like what Tim and I used to talk about all the time, it's being authentic.
Mm.
Vulnerable is not always the right word, but
Right. Yeah.
authentic with other people and saying, look, I haven't always gotten this right.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my intent. I want to figure this thing out. I want to do it right. How do we do it? Because so often high achievers or just humans, if you become a parent, you just become a parent and you've got to figure it out. So are
Learn how
you
to read that little
seeking,
human.
yeah, are you seeking help? Are you seeking guidance? And then back to what Tim had said is that you may have a lot of things in your head that you've learned.
Mm.
You and I have talked about it, and we talked about it at the beginning of this episode, is we consume so much. We read books. It makes us feel good because we've heard that.
Mm-hmm.
We get that warm and fuzzy feeling because we may listen to a Jocko episode and like, yes, that's exactly
Right.
what I want to do. Do we ever do it?
Are we
And I
implementing
commend you
those things? Yes.
and I commend you, Tim, for stepping into that in all aspects of your life. And I know that it just was more prevalent with the work position that you took. So one of the questions, because I know that you're busy, especially now knowing that you have 40 people, but
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like they're empowered, so they don't need you for the
Oh yeah.
hour.
So let me pause there. That is something I think as a leader that if I could instill that to everyone is that decentralized decision making, the ability to make decisions, right? And it comes down to the commander's intent. They understand, like, and I test this out. Like, I intentionally sometimes will do this, not respond to a question, not respond to something because they know that I'm out of the office, but they also know that I have it on my phone. They also know that I'll respond to things that are very important. I'll tune in. But I've tested this and try this out. Like I challenge everybody else, who has this where you feel like everybody's coming to you. What would they do if you weren't there? If you didn't respond? How would they get the work done? How would they move forward? How do they make their decisions? And so with that's something that's a good team. That's a solid team. And that's the thing that I've tested out, tried, doing a really, because it feels good. Your ego likes when people come to you and ask you questions. It likes to be the one in charge. It likes to be the one that has everything all figured out. But that's not really good leadership, actually. Really good leadership is allowing your people or getting them to a place to where they feel confident, they feel safe, they feel secure in making decisions for the betterment of the team. And so, to your point, yes, I step away today, and I don't need to worry about anything because I know that they're going to take care of it, which is a great place to be. And something actually I've learned from uh, Will, which was you should always, and I learned this actually from Dr. Sam Chan many years ago too, and Will just reinforced it, which was you should always be trying to be replaceable and not irreplaceable as a lead. And so I train my people to do what I do, so that way I don't always have to be here.
Yeah, because that burden becomes crushing if you feel like everything has to come to you. So at first,
Yeah.
like you said, is it feeds your ego. You feel needed, you feel wanted, that they couldn't do this without me. And then over time, it just keeps piling on to
Yeah.
the point where the weight is just too much to bear and you break. I mean, I
Yep.
know that happened to me, is that you're feeding gaps and holes that you have in other areas of your life through that. And
Mhm.
when you said that and you held up the phone, I mean, as a parent, we're so connected, and with our friends and with everybody, is that instead of trying to find an answer, the first thing we do is we ask somebody, "Hey, what is the answer?" And you go
Yeah.
to somebody who we
Right.
know always knows. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes people ask me a question, I have to Google it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, let me look it up. When it should be, like you said, is that our first reaction should be is, I don't know the answer, let me see if I can find it, and use Tim as a last resort, or use
100%.
me as a last resort. It's like, look, I've looked everywhere. I may not be asking the right questions or looking for the right answer, but I'm stuck. And then that's when you can work through things. And I learn that way better than I do just by looking it up. But I also learn better by looking it up than I do just asking you a question, you
Mm-hmm.
giving me the answer. I regurgitate the answer,
Yeah.
and then it's not there.
I was gonna say, you go and you do it, and then you walk away from it. You never learn anything. You just do it because it was like what was given to you, right? So anyway, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah, no,
shift there.
no, it's and that's what I wanted. I wanted a good back and forth, and it really is. And in the phone, this is a challenge, and I like to have a challenge in each episode in 2026. And one of them is, can you resist the urge to just immediately respond when somebody's asking you a non-life threatening
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
that you feel like that, you know what? I know that they know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
They're just too insecure to make a decision.
That's
And
good.
that's most of us.
Yeah.
I would say 9.5 times out of 10, we know the answer and we know what we should do. We're just looking for someone else to potentially blame and say, well, Tim told me to do
Mm-hmm.
that. Well, you
Mm-hmm.
were going to do it anyways. Tim just, reminded you. So
Yeah.
it's a challenge that I want to give to everybody, because we have become far too dependent on other people. And then we freak out. If I
Mm.
reach out to Tim and he hasn't responded in 30 seconds, it's like,
Yeah.
well, why not? He's going to text you back, and all of a sudden you're going to have 8 text messages in
You're
five
setting
minutes
culture
because,
when you do that, by the way. You're setting
yeah.
culture. That's the culture that you're building, and we haven't talked much about culture, but that's truly what that is, right? You're teaching people what what the culture is. And if the culture is, oh, I'll just go ask my leader and he'll tell me, then they're going to do it every time, so
Yeah. And it's tough. It's a difficult place to be in, because again, we're in the position where we're in because of what we bring to the team. But like you
hmm
said, is that, are you creating your replacement? And that's the way I always
yeah.
approached leadership, was I need to make sure that, you know, who's the next man up?
I already know who
That,
my replacement is, right? And I don't know when my end date is here,
yeah.
but I'm already like, he's hands down. I've already kind of, there's a few people, but there's one in particular, and I'm pouring into him as if, because who
Yeah.
knows what could happen to me,
Well, and if you just
something
want to
could
take a
happen.
vacation for two
Yeah,
weeks, I mean,
yeah,
you get vacation days for a
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
And so many of us feel like, well, I can't go on vacation because it's going to be a nightmare when I
No,
come
oh,
back.
yeah.
Well,
No
you got
concern.
somebody right
Yeah,
now, like, bye,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
deuces, I'm out.
Goodbye. Yeah,
I'm going to take a vacation and know that I'm going to come back to, yeah, there'll be a few things that I got to catch up
sure.
on.
Yeah.
But by and large, everything's going to go. And that's a beautiful feeling.
And that's something that and you feel free to transition anytime you want, but that's something too that I have always learned, even before I was, you know I've kind of always been in some lead role, but yet this is very different. This is the largest team I've ever led. We're in Canada and the US, and so it's, team members literally all over the place. And so this is, a very interesting dynamic that I've been in. But one of the things that I've always known to do is push down work. If there's something that I could do, or something that someone else could do, push it down. And so that was something I learned many, many, many years ago in leadership, which was if someone could do it at 70% capacity of you, pass it off. And so as leaders, we should always not again, you got to subordinate that ego. And it's not an ego thing like, oh, this is, below me, or this is, whatever, I should be doing this or this, you need to check that if that's your thoughts. And so, but it's more or less, hey, I need to move on to some of these more strategic things. There's some strategic things that we need to be thinking about for the future or for where the direction we're going. That frees you up to be able to go more, or just more. For me, like, I've done that so much to where now I get to sit and think about throughout the day. Yeah, there's other things that I got to do, but a majority of what I do now is like, just how do I better lead? How do I better, and not just my team, but the teams that I so influence, which are, 5, 6, 7 other different disciplines. So now I get to have an opportunity, because I'm not bogged down with every day-to-day aspect of my team. I'm able to think at a higher level and think of the things that's worked for us. How can we start incorporating that into the rest of the company or other disciplines and things like that? So it gives you an opportunity to coach and lead and mentor other people versus being kind of in the business, so to speak, on all things.
Yeah, when you're talking, some feedback that I had received at one point, because I felt like that I needed to do everything. It helped me feel secure and needed.
Secure,
And it
that's
was
the
you're
thing. Yeah.
not that important.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that stung. And it was tough because, the example was, because I always felt like I had to respond to every email as it came in.
Mm,
And so this was a VP who had to know how to do that, because she's getting emails all the time. I mean,
yeah.
I had a bunch of emails. You just increase it by
Oh, yeah.
tenfold, probably, as her emails. And she's like, all you're doing is you're taking it from your desk and you're putting it on my desk.
Mm,
And she's like, answering emails at 2 a.m., at 9:30, and you're sending emails to your team at 9:30 at night. And all that. They're like, you're setting, to use your words, Tim, the wrong culture. Is
yeah.
that you say work-life balance is important, but you're sending emails at 9:30 at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're getting up and you're sending things. And so there's things called delayed send. There's things that if you're just an early riser, there's things that you can
Yeah.
do to maintain the right culture.
Yeah.
Just because you're up at 4 a.m. going through emails, which isn't healthy, by the way.
No.
But if you're up at 4 a.m. sending those things, hit the send later option. You
Yes.
can even, if you think of a text at 10:30 at night, the iPhone now has a send later button where you can program when it is that would fall into business hours. So
Yeah.
there's things that you can do. And what you'll find, and I know you can see it on Tim's face if you're not watching it, is just the freedom when he's talking
Yeah.
about knowing that he's sitting here having a great conversation without having to feel like
Mm,
he's got to look at his phone. He's got to see what's going on. And
yeah.
that's a prison that you create for yourself. The other thing, and then I'll let you talk, and we may have to do these on a regular basis, by the way. There's
I would
just so
love that.
much
Yeah. This is
to
fun. Yeah.
unpack. Is the idea of perfection. And
Mm,
you talked about 70%. As long as it's 70%, that, and some people are like, oh, well, good is the enemy of great.
mm,
Yeah, but good is also the victor of getting things done. And
mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm,
not, my dad always said, well, it's good enough for government work, meaning
mm,
that just you got to get started. You got to get something out. Now, if, and again, all these overlay, and hopefully the audience can understand where Tim and I are going. He's got these teams and these squads that are looking at imperfections and issues so things don't get out.
mm-hmm.
But you still have to get things done.
Yeah.
And where maybe there was a misspelling or some grammar or something that's inconsequential to really the
The
actual
overall design.
execution of
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
that it's good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why, and what I'm doing is I'll spend so much time looking at a newsletter or a web page that I'm helping make. I'm going to miss something. My dyslexia, my ADHD, all of those things kind of fold in, and I've got things that are misspelled. But I've also looked at it 33 times and I know what I'm supposed to say. So my brain just like, well, that's the word.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so when somebody else sees it, they're like, you
Yes.
realize you capitalized the O second. I'm like, I had no idea, and those are
And
things where,
that is the exact reason why we established the squads, because you get so intimate with the work that you're doing that now there's like these blind spots within it. And it's like, I'm so close to my hand right now. I can't even see you, but I know you're there, but I can't see you. And so detaching, pulling back, now I can actually start to see you a bit. So part of that detachment is, this is not mine. This is part of the project, and I need extra eyes on this to see, to protect us all, right? So that's that extra eye. That's the squad. The squad's this. So like, if I have something, I submit it to the squad to back check. They're unfamiliar with it. They've got fresh eyes. They get to look at it and see it from a whole different perspective because they're detached from the project. I'm so involved in it that I miss things because I'm so intimate with it. To your point with your newsletters, right? So you're going to miss it if but anyway, so yeah.
yeah. Well, and another example is when I wrote my book and I talked about getting 360 feedback. You and I talking about
Yeah, yeah.
360 feedback. We
All the
get
time.
it. We know
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about. And my wife, who had never been technically in like the business corporate world, she had been in education. She had no idea what 360 feedback meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So me and my editor, we had been going back and forth. We both knew what it was. We had talked about it. And so then she reads it because I had her read it, to your point, as just having a fresh set of eyes that's very nitpicky. And she read it. She's like, I don't know what this means. And it was such great feedback because it didn't mean that I had to rewrite the whole book. It
Yeah.
just meant I needed to add a small sentence explaining that 360 feedback is allowing someone to provide you feedback
Yeah.
that you lead, and just being able to correct that one little piece because she's like, I don't really know what it is. So if I was to give my book to a reader that was not in corporate world, that may derail the
Mm,
rest of the chapter because they're trying to
yeah.
like, what is 360 feedback? Then they've got to try to figure it out. So then that's my lack of clarity creating a problem that I didn't even
Hmm.
know was there. That again, it's insignificant to the whole book in and of itself, but that one little thing is easily corrected. So without having ego, I was like, oh, that's great feedback. Fixed
Mm,
it. My editor was like, holy smokes, I can't believe I didn't see it either. But we had talked about it so much
yeah.
that neither one of us, even though that's his job, is to look at it, but I had described it so well in our conversations, he knew
Yeah.
what it was, and so off he went. So
Yeah.
it's great, and it's something that I want the listeners to really think about as you go through there, and that leadership is all about serving, and I hope that through this, because again, Tim and I have had so many conversations like this that we're not leaving any gaps that would help you or that would hinder you from understanding the importance of servant leadership is empowering other people to make
Hmm.
decisions while you guide them. So it's not like just completely blind trust and saying, go and figure it out. It's,
Yeah.
hey, go make some decisions and let's talk about it
Yeah.
for good and for development.
Yeah, permission to fail. I had a leader who didn't want to step up, and he didn't feel like he was ready to lead a squad yet. And I'm like, okay, no problem. I'm not here to pressure you or push you, but I just want to let you know that, if you were to choose to do this, that you have full permission to fail. And I expect you to fail often, and I expect you to start to fail better because as you fail, you're going to learn, you're going to grow. You're not always going to be ready. What you think you're ready, you're going to jump in and you're going to realize, crap, I'm not ready. So the sooner you jump in and fail, we're going to be right there. Everybody, the team's going to be there. I'm going to be there coaching you along the way, helping you along the way. You're going to fail, and that's okay. And as long as you learn from it, and continue to grow, like all is well, right? And so I do. Do you mind if I transition just slightly back to your? I want to get back to your title, if you don't mind, like Pathways to
Yeah.
Greatness. I was thinking about this for as we were talking about the team and decision making and servant leadership and all these different things. But there are times when you, as the lead, the one who's ultimately in charge, because at the end of the day, you know, you can allow others to make decisions. And I'm going to plug a book here real quick, The Decision Maker. This was something I learned years ago too. I can't even remember where I bought this book, but it was before I even moved back to South Carolina. So that was like 7, 8 years ago or whatever. So I read this book about Decision Maker, and it's about decentralized decisions, you know, not allowing these bottlenecks. And I won't rehash all that just because we've already done that. Um, but at the end of the day, someone's still in charge. So if one of my folks who is given empowerment to make a decision makes a decision and it's a wrong decision, or it created some sort of issue, I'm still I they're not going to take the blame. I'm going to take the blame. I own the team. I take full ownership, right? And so at that we have to make tough decisions sometimes, and it's for the betterment of the team. And so, like, if we go back to, I'm going to drop another book, you know, Good to Great. I think about that. Like, if you're going to go from a good company, that book was written by Jim Collins, and it was how to take a good company to become a great company. And so, uh, you know, I started thinking about this. Okay, here's a team that is underperforming. How do we get them to greatness? And they're not even in the good state right now, according to, you know, the optics of those out there, you know, that could see them. So, but how do we get them to greatness? Because that was my goal. Like, our company's vision is to be the best water resource firm, you know, period. And so for them to be the best, our team has to be the best. And so for us to be the best, we can't settle for mediocrity. We can't settle for just good enough. We can't settle for just things. We have to show up every single day giving our best. My best today might be different than, you know, my best tomorrow or the day before. But as long as each team member is showing up giving their best, we're going to step into that, right? We're going to become the best. And so, but Good to Great, you know, is about having the right people on the bus. And so those were some decisions that I had to make early on. Is the people that are currently here, these 19, are they the, you know, are they the best people on the bus right now? Are they going to help us to go to greatness? Some of them weren't. And so we had to make some tough decisions to release some folks. We obviously, in the heart and in the spirit of coaching and developing people, which is what I love to do, is develop people. You do your best to try to develop them. But if they're not getting there, we have to make those tough decisions to get them off the bus. And then it's the next step is to review whether they're in the right seats on the bus. We had some people who were like, man, they're totally good for the company, but they're just in the wrong seat. You know, and that could be, in this case, project related, that where they were on a project and they were so disruptive to the project. So it's like, hey, for your sanity, for your peace of mind, for your lack of, you know, relieving some of that stress off of you, because at the end of the day, it's project success over individual success. And so, and team success over individual. So for the sake of that project team, we're going to put you over here on this project, which you would much rather, I mean, you fit over here way better than you fit here. Of course, that doesn't feel good to the individual. It's disruptive. It's all these things, but you have to make those tough calls for the sake of the team, for the sake of the mission, so to speak. And so I wanted to make that distinction, because if you're on a pathway to greatness, you're going to have to make some calls that don't feel uh, warm and fuzzy, right, or sexy. But you have to make those calls. You just do. So, but you do it with empathy and understanding, and like, hey, this is. But again, I make sure that I communicate every decision that we're making. This is why I'm making this decision. This is why we're going this direction. This is why this is being, we're having to move you from here to here. I just had to do that 2 months ago with another team member. Maybe it was a month ago, but it's just giving them the understanding and the clarity behind this, and hey, they saw it as a failure, but that's okay. Learn from this. And learn from that opportunity. This is not a dig on you or a knock on you. We're not mad at you. You're not getting fired here. We're not, this is just better alignment for you. And that's the key. Like when you're in a top lead role and you're leading a team, is alignment. And I know we probably don't have time to go into all that, but that's the key, is to get everybody in alignment. And you're going to have disagreements along the way, but the bottom line is, are we in agreement with some of the key facets and principles of this team? Are we in alignment? Yes. Okay, well, we can still disagree on some of these other items. As long as we stay in alignment, we're good. So,
well, in what you shared, and I should just leave it at it, but I have to add this to it, is, to your point, is because you might not be good at one thing doesn't mean you're great at another, that you're not great at another thing. Is there's so many times where we don't see it, and we need somebody from the outside to say, look, I know this is where you want to be, and this is what you want to do. You got to trust me that over here, you're going to have less resistance. You're going to be less challenged to do these things where this is your lane, and you get there, and then you look back and go, man, I'm so glad that Tim moved me over here. Because how many times do you hear those responses at, like, you just individually, you're like, man, I tried to do that just did not work. And then when you look back, you go like, man, I'm so glad I pivoted over here, because this just felt better. Yeah. Maybe I'm making less money. Maybe that, it's not as prestigious, but holy smokes, there's less resistance. It's not that it's not challenging. It's just you're not going against where God wants you to go. And that's back to your point that you said earlier. And that might be the theme of today's episode, is ego. Are you willing to put your ego in check and allow somebody to say, hey, look, I've seen the big picture. I need you over here. Because over here, I just don't feel like that you're in your sweet spot. Over here, I think we got a better chance you getting where you need to be. Yeah. And I need you over here because you have strengths that will put you here. There's a really good visual that I would say. So my son has been working with a coach, and he's offensive line. But when you hear his story, it's pretty incredible. He was a high school quarterback, never played offensive line, high school quarterback. So then he walks on to college as a tight end, which he had never played, but he's just physically, he just has the stature, and he's an athlete. So while he was there, he's like, I was an okay tight end. Then they moved him to defensive line. And he's like, I was kind of okay. I was better than I was at a tight end, but I was at defensive line. He's like, I just wanted to be on the team. And then by his junior year, they had some injuries. They're like, we really want to try you at offensive line. And so he moved from a quarterback in high school to offensive line to being all conference his senior year as an offensive lineman, then played 12 years in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. And you sit here and you think, this was a high school quarterback. If you would have asked him when he was 18 years old of, hey, you're going to play 12 years in the NFL as an offensive lineman, he would have laughed you off. But what he said was, he goes, I realized I was an unathletic quarterback. I was a moderately athletic tight end. I was somewhat of an athletic defensive lineman, but there's some really athletes that are there. He's like, but I realized I was a very athletic offensive lineman. Wow. So it's somebody else saw opportunities. He had such a great open mind, and he didn't have a fixed mindset. It was a growth mindset. It was just, you put me somewhere and I want to play because I want to get a scholarship. Yeah. And then I want to play at the next level. And so he allowed his coaches who saw something in him to try. And he's like, I failed at every position I was in at first, but the longer I was there. So if he would have said, I only want to be a tight end,
Yeah. Yeah.
he probably would have never earned a scholarship and definitely wouldn't have
Yeah.
made it to the NFL, most likely.
Plasticity. That's the word that comes to mind.
Ooh,
You
that's a good
know,
one.
being very plastic, and being able to mold and shape into what really you need to be. And sometimes that takes on different forms at different times. But being able to be plastic and uh, flexible, to be able to adapt. Adaptability is a key thing. As there's some things that we use to rate our team members, is are they adaptable? So. But yeah, no, that's good. It's key, especially as a leader. You're going to have to learn how to adapt and change and move and all these different things. So
Yep, for
good
sure.
stuff.
Well, Tim, I definitely want to be respectful of your time. We're going to do this again. We'll figure out
Sounds
if we
good.
just need to do this on a once a month basis or whatever.
Yeah.
But I always enjoy having conversations with you, and this will give you a good outlet
Oh, I love
to,
it.
to
Yeah.
share some
Yeah.
leadership stuff. So, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Woo. Just on the theme of today, just to kind of keep it along that same theme of what we've talked about is, find areas, take some time to reflect. I'm big on reflecting and taking some time. A lot of times we don't take enough time to reflect or to think, really to slow down and think about like what we just heard, what we're doing, what we're about, where do we want, what do we really want, so maybe just take some time to sit and think and reflect, and before you rush off to the next podcast episode or the next meeting or the next whatever, is just take some time to reflect, and or if you can't do it right now, take some, make a very intentional effort to do that, to where you reflect on what's my style, like, you know where's ego showing up for me. I think that's a big thing, is like identifying that, like, where is ego showing up, and then if I'm in a lead role, whether that's my family or whether that's my workplace, whether that's school, whether that's wherever, where am I empowering others to actually lead and make decisions and influence me as a leader? How am I allowing my team to, am I building trust with them? Am I building, a relationship with them to where they can influence me just as well? So find areas like that, reflect on that, and see where that stuff starts to show up or doesn't show up, and kind of make the tweaks that are necessary. Don't try to do it all, but make enough tweaks to where you start to make some improvements. So
Yep, that's awesome. So, if I'm not mistaken, you're living on LinkedIn now. Is that where you're at? Or are you starting a
yeah, I
Substack blog or anything?
no, I've considered doing some blogs again, getting back into that space. The podcast I've kicked around, opening that back up, the newsletter, things like that, but I haven't yet. And so, yeah, LinkedIn currently right now is the only place that I've like started to re-engage with currently. But you could always email me or I guess find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, like I can give you my post there, or just email, and then I can correspond. And I do want to do the newsletter because I do have some blogs and things that I've you know want to work on. So, but yeah,
I'm hearing good things through my brother and other people about Substack, that a lot of
yeah,
people have left social media and they're just doing everything in Substack
yeah.
because
You
it,
notice I didn't say. Sorry to interrupt you. You notice I didn't say LinkedIn, Facebook,
yeah,
Instagram,
exactly. No, stay away.
TikTok, Twitter, all these other
Oh my
X now,
goodness.
whatever. So yeah. Anyway,
It's a mess.
we
But
won't go there.
Substack, a lot of people, it's
Cool.
like I guess a better version of Reddit because it doesn't have a lot of nonsense, and it starts
Yeah.
to learn and feed you people based on what you're writing, and then it just creates a pretty cool web of in and out, and it's easy to read. You can look it on your app, and then it's not the nonsense that you get with social media. But like anything, I'm sure it will be taken over in a couple of years, and it'll look just like everything
I'm gonna
else.
find something else that's quieting the noise. Yeah, that's been my main thing, is just to you know, in 22, this, I kind of dropped all those platforms and just took a hiatus, and we can talk more about that another time because that's a whole nother conversation, and there's a lot of growth from that. But it just quieten the noise mainly, which
Yeah.
has been a major blessing. So I'll check out Substack though.
Yeah. Check that out. And and again, like you leaving all those things has been, you haven't missed anything. And then the other part is that I find myself, I'm so frustrated with everything that's there. My time on there is less and less.
Yeah.
And just because there's less things on there. And when I go back, and I don't, again, we should just stop the episode. But like when we connected, I felt like
Yeah.
Instagram was a really good place to find
Oh, it
people,
really
to
was.
connect with people. We built a wonderful community, and you see that now. And I've been doing a lot of self-evaluation. Have I allowed that community to dissolve because I haven't been as interactive? But you see it. You just don't see everybody together like we were for like 2 or 3 years. I mean, it was
Yeah.
tight.
It
I
was
mean, we were
tight.
all in there, and
Yeah.
now, life has moved on. But anyways, let's look at ego. We won't start another episode. We could go
Yeah.
another two
Yeah.
hours.
We'll leave it
But
there.
Tim, I want to invite you back. We are going to figure this out. So when I hit stop, please hang on just for a second. But ladies and
We'll do.
gentlemen, you have Tim Douglas.
Thank you.